What's up, guys? Here we are. Let's talk some fishing. I'm trying to juggle putting these videos up and working, and we have a bunch of kids, so been trying to juggle all of them together and put these up for you guys as often as I can. So I'll just make one real quick driving to work. So right now in most of the country, we got the post-spawn period. Fish are done spawning, they're done on beds. There's still a couple lingering around, garden fry, but for the most part, and with an exception of a few places, most of the fish are done spawning. So right now is like the prime time for junk fishing, really. I mean, I've been catching them anywhere from, I'll catch one in a foot, and then I'll catch a couple I caught yesterday in 12 foot. So it's that time of year where you got to just fish everything and check everything, you know, like they're so spread out right now. And this is going to apply anywhere. Most places, you know, where you have reservoirs or you're fishing lakes, you know, unless it's the water temperature's still pretty cold where you're at, they're going to be real spread out. All the females I've been catching are real skinny and lethargic. They don't fight real well. They're, you know, recuperating from the spawn. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, though, I've been, you know, doing a lot of guide trips this year, and one of the biggest things that I'm seeing with people that are newer to fishing is fishing crankbaits. And right now is a good time to crank. You can cover a lot of water. You can, even if the fish don't want to eat, you're causing reaction strikes because it's bouncing off of something in front of them and they have to eat it. So one of the biggest things with crankbaits, for sure, there's two things that are really crucial: your line size and how you're fishing the crankbait. Okay, and I'm speaking like mid-depth cranks or deep diving cranks in this one. So when you're fishing a crankbait, I put a video up last year that's telling you what kind of structure to look for, and I show you in the video exactly what you should be looking for, and then you can back out and crank that. So one of the biggest things is when you're cranking and you know where your target's at. Say there's a rock pile that's, you know, 20 yards, 30 yards in front of you, facing straight from your boat, and you cast to the target. A lot of people I notice will cast right at the target or just past the target and then start cranking. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind when you're cranking, that bait, if you're fishing 10, 12, 15, even sometimes an 8, 6 foot, it takes that bait at least 5 to 10 cranks for that bait to get down to the depth that you want to target. So it doesn't make any sense if you're casting right to the target. That bait is going to completely miss whatever it is you're trying to fish, and it's going to come down on an angle, right? So instead of doing that, when you know your target is 20 or 30 yards in front of you because you're looking at your screen and you see your waypoint, right? Cast as far past that target as you can, all right? And then start cranking, because what's going to happen is that bait is going to take a couple seconds to get down to the depth that you want to target. And if you know, if you're casting right over it, it's going to miss it. So you got to cast as far past it as you can and then crank it down and make sure that your bait is on the bottom. Most of the time, the mistakes I see with people crankbait fishing are either too big a line size for the crankbait they're fishing, the improper crankbait for what they're fishing, or they're casting right at the target instead of past the target. If you're not feeling your bait hit that bottom, you know, bouncing off that bottom and deflecting off a cover, you're not getting bit. There's no other way to it. That's all there is to it. If you're not hitting shit, you're not getting bit. Simple as that. So just remember that. Now with line size, when you're cranking, I've been experimenting a little bit this year, which I've caught a lot of crankbait fish already. I went up from 12-pound line to 15-pound line just to stop it from breaking off so easily, because I don't retie all that often, but I feel like you shouldn't have to retie, you know, every 10 casts or so, and it seems like you have to do that with 12-pound line. So I went up to 15-pound line, and it's gonna dull the action of the bait a little bit, but not enough to where it'll matter, you know. So going from 12 to 15 might help a little bit. Even 14 would probably be better. But so with line size, if you're throwing, you know, I would say 15 to 20 foot, I would go either 12 or 14. But when you're fishing a little bit shallower than that, you can go up, you know, 14, 15. I probably wouldn't go any heavier than 15. But what that heavier line is going to do, if you're throwing a 6-foot crankbait, something that's supposed to run 6 foot, and you're throwing that on 20-pound line, that crankbait's only going to go, you know, 3 foot, 4.5 foot, something like that. So you're not getting it down to the depth you should. So keep that in mind. You want your line size, and definitely always use fluorocarbon. Don't mess around with braid, even braid with a leader. Don't do any of that. Just throw straight fluorocarbon, because it's going to sink. It's going to get the bait down where you need it, and you're going to be able to feel the bait and exactly what it's doing. And now the last thing I wanted to tell you about was the size of the crankbait. Okay, so in Strike King's line, you have a Series 4, a Series 5, a Series 5XD, a Series 6, and a Series 6XD. So you're going to cover that covers every bit of the depth that you're going to be trying to fish. And what I normally do, if I'm trying to fish a rock pile or wood that's in 10 to 12 foot, I want to run a bait that's going to run a couple feet deeper than that. So a 5XD is what I'm going to throw in 10 to 12, because you're going to get 15 foot on 12-pound line out of a 5XD. So if you're fishing 15 foot, you don't want to throw a Series 5, which is going to go 10 to 13 foot, because it's running too shallow. You're not going to be able to get it down deep enough. Same thing applies with the 6XD, which runs 19 foot. So if you're fishing, you know, 15, 16, 17 foot, you want that 6XD where it's going to run a little bit deeper and throwing past your target. Remember that. That's key. So that's something to keep in mind, is pick the crankbait based on what you're fishing. Now, you don't want to throw a 6XD that runs 19 foot in 5 foot. It's going to kill the bait. The bait's going to hit the bottom. It's going to drag and drag and drag, and you're not going to get that hunting action that you want. You want the bait to just barely be touching the bottom. Okay? So those are a few things that you want to keep in mind this summer, early summer, now that it's post-spawn. Fish everything. Anything that looks good, fish it. The fish could be anywhere from a foot to 12 foot. Some of them even deeper than that, depending on how clear the water is you're fishing. So I'm going to try and keep posting these as often as I can, put little tidbits there. I do want to do a video still on cranking, just so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. But for the most part, pick the proper line size to what you're fishing. Throw the proper crankbait that runs just a few feet deeper than what you're fishing. And don't use too big of a crankbait, and throw past your targets. All right, so hope this helps you guys. If you need anything in specific that you want me to show you, just post it in the comments, and I'll get to it as soon as I can. Hope you guys have a good day. And for all you fathers out there, happy Father's Day this Sunday. I'll see you guys on the water.